Hello and good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Ending Well with Minnelle. My name is Minnelle Williams. I'm a licensed funeral director and end-of-life educator. Now, why do I call myself that? I have studied to be a funeral director. As you see, I have my CEA, my Certified Executor Assistant, and I've also studied to become an end-of-life doula. I do all of this because I'm very passionate about end of life and ensuring, of course, that we end well. And so I hope that with this platform, that as you're watching and you're seeing other episodes, my goal is to educate us about the ending process, the ending well process, what paperwork is involved, what feelings might arise. And the more education we have, perhaps it will normalize the conversation about end of life and then lead to more action, because I'm very much an advocate for planning ahead, and the better that we are planned, hopefully the easier the process will be. So thank you for joining me this evening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. This is a solo episode, so it's just me, and I'll be sharing a mini portion of one of my talks that I give. Of course, it's called Ending Well with Minnelle. Now, if you've seen other episodes and if you're enjoying what you're watching on YouTube perhaps, or any streaming platform, please go ahead and subscribe so that you can be up to date as to when other episodes are airing and what information is being shared. Thank you. All right, let's begin. First thing I like to talk about is me. If you don't know, I talked a little bit about my education, but part of the reason why I'm really passionate about this is that I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and I've seen many stories from our families. I've seen stories personally within our family of times where we've been trying to plan ahead, times where a death has occurred, and how it affects the family and how it could be smoothed if we took some time to talk ahead of time. Now, I'll use myself as an example. I told you, I've been in this industry for a while. And when it comes to speaking to perhaps my father about planning ahead, he is a Caribbean man. He was quite hesitant to having these discussions. So we would easily, slowly I have another episode about this where we talk about how do you approach your parents? How do you have these conversations? Because it's not as easy as talking about, hey, what's going on today? Or, hey, when you retire, where do you want to live? Those kinds of things. We're talking about death. And to bring that up with our parents is uncomfortable for them. It's uncomfortable for us. We don't want to think about them dying. So it has to be brought up with tact and also understanding that it's important. So I come back to what I was saying before. When trying to speak to my father about these things, it was difficult, to say the least. I did not get all of the answers that I had wanted. And even with me being what I do, with my passion, and sitting down with him and trying to get the answers to what is important to you. What would be important to you at the end of your life? In case of XXX, what would your wishes be? Do you have your documents? Where can I find this? Where can I find your banking information? Or that's typically what we start with, right? So going through some of these conversations was difficult and was successful and wasn't successful. There's all of that happens. So I use this talk to help you kind of have these conversations with your family and move forward in a successful way. So I guess that was a little bit about who I was. I think I got into what I talk about as well. Either way, I'm very passionate about ending well, about end of life, and I'm thankful to have this opportunity to share. That's me. So here's the 3 Ps. Let's talk about my 3 Ps of legacy planning. So the paperwork is very important. The planning aspect is also important. And don't forget about your personal legacy. All right, so let's go through what all of these are. First is your paperwork. The paperwork is what I like to talk about, your first 4, right? You have your will. So your will, you will contact the lawyer. That's one we all typically start with. You contact your lawyer. You get your will together. You go through where everything is, who you want to be, who you want to have, or to, one more time, who you'd like to give certain items to. Now doing your will ahead of time, now you're going to have that document somewhere stored so that your family members will have access to it. I laugh because my favorite story is a person who is keeping it in their fridge, in their freezer, sorry. Like wherever you're going to store your will, please make sure your family knows where they can get it because it's important for them to have it. There's no point having a will if they don't know where it is. Also, you want to make sure that it's up to date. Have you gotten married? Have you gotten divorced? Do you have children? Has something changed in your stature? Has life changed? Did you get a new insurance policy? Any of those things, well, you can include in your will. You want to have that information there so that it is up to date and a useful document for your family. Now, there's a few ways that you can create a will. The best, in my humble opinion, is by going to a lawyer and having someone who has the knowledge, education, and ability to help you create the best possible will. Because once you pass, it is your will that is speaking for you as well as your executor. So it's very important to make sure that it's clear and your family understand what your wishes are based on what is written in the document. And I say that because some people create wills on their own. If that's the case, be sure that it is clear and it can't be misinterpreted because you don't want a sentence to, especially when people, you know how we get. Sometimes the people like me, the overthinkers, or we have other family members who read a sentence a different way. And now, if many of us are reading this a different way, we don't know how to interpret what you said. Now we're going to be perhaps going to the courts or going to a mediator or someone else to assist us in understanding the direction of the will because it wasn't clearly stated, right? So that's why I typically say, if possible, please go to a lawyer and have it professionally done to avoid some of those issues. Not that it can't still happen if a lawyer has done your will, but it's definitely better for the family. It's better for the process if there is a third party and if the correct language has been included in the will already. Okay, so that's your power of attorney. The next item would be was your will. The next item is your power of attorney. And I absolutely believe in these two documents. They're very important. Most times you'll have them created when you create your will. Your power of attorney documents will allow someone to act on your behalf, both for your health and for your finances, right? So these two are important documents. Make sure you've spoken to your power of attorney so that they know that you've asked them to take on this role and when it will take an effect, because your power of attorney for property can take effect right now. So in case you're traveling or doing something else, your power of attorney can actually help you pay bills, do whatever is required, but they just need to know when they've been given that permission to act. The next one there, your living will or your advanced care directives, that gives your power of attorney the instructions, right? A lot of times we get documents completed, they're done. We think, yes, I've completed what I needed to do. I can move on. But without the instruction, you're still leaving your family without direction, right? We're still lost. So it's very important that you have a living will or an advanced care directive. What that does is it decides what's important to me. I use this example all the time. If you've been watching me on this show, then I'm sure you've heard it already. But there is a gentleman that told his family, I want to be able to drink a beer and watch the ball game, baseball. And as long as he could do those two things, then they had their instructions. So if the doctor said, okay, unfortunately, we need to amputate his leg, can those two things still happen? Then please go ahead. But if the doctor say, okay, now we need to do something and it might affect his eyes, okay, maybe we know based on what he deems important for quality of life, we won't do whatever needs to be done with his eyes and we'll ensure that he can watch the game as long as possible, right? So giving your family those directives helps them know what you want and what you do not want. Those are two sides of the coin that are both important to share. I want to be surrounded by family. I want to be listening to jazz all day long. I want to be in the most comfortable bed in an isolated room away from others if possible. I do not want to feel pain. I do not want to be resuscitated. Those are two different sides of the coin, but both directives are very important. Your finances. Well, this one we know, right? We want to make sure that we have our finances in order. Do we have insurance? Do we have beneficiaries put on our insurance so that when the funds are available, someone has access to them? Have we set up our finances in such a way that there's tax planning involved so that when the time should come that we pass, our family gets the most of our assets and pay as little tax as possible? Right? Taking our time now to set up our assets. We work so hard, and we know two things are guaranteed in life: death and taxes. So, in all of the work that we're doing, please take your time to ensure that you're reducing how much your family has to pay in tax and giving as much as you can to your family. On that, when it comes to closing an estate, a lot of times people will say, okay, I've got insurance. I'm going to use that to close my estate. You want to, or to do all your affairs. You want to make sure that you have enough there to cover each aspect, because many times we forget that taxes still need to be paid and those funds need to come from somewhere, right? So just things to think in mind or to keep in mind when it comes to planning ahead. All right. The next one is your planning. And this is my wheelhouse. So I'll take a moment to speak here. So planning ahead, I'm speaking about your funeral as well your cemetery arrangements. And I say that and I start there on purpose because many of the families that I sit with, they'll say, I've got it done. I have my cemetery. Okay. That is important. That is land. We know that land cost increase. So if you have that done, fantastic. But please don't forget about the funeral side. That's the first call your family will make at the time that someone passes. They call the funeral home and say, what do I do? If you've already spoken to me or another funeral director and you've put your arrangements in place, now your family can just say, okay, the death has occurred. Please help me through the process, as opposed to calling and trying to figure out, what do I do? I've never done this before and I need help. It's a lot for them to handle at that time. So when it comes to making pre-arrangements, when you're thinking about who is going to be looking after your arrangements, what is involved, think of, will they know what to do? Do they know what your wishes are? And we can put those down. So you can decide, I do want to have a service or I don't. I do as much or as little as you want. I say this all the time. In every family I've met with, they've heard that phrase. You can do as much or as little as you like. I have a lady who has her dress already selected, her picture that she wants used already selected. You can decide everything so that they don't have to question, would mom want to have this hat on or would she want her hair out? Those kind of things we can write down for you. The other thing is, will they agree? I use this example because I've been in the industry. I know what happens when families come. If you say, I don't care, just do something simple, and now your children come to the funeral home, and when they arrive, now they both say something simple and they look, let's say, at the service and they decide simple means, one, we'll say simple is just direct cremation. Nothing. Just we'll do something by ourselves at home. Just direct cremation, no service, nothing. We'll have mom cremated and that will be the end. It's simple. The other child might say, simple to me means a service, everything on the same day. It's simple. It's just one day. They're both right. Both are simple, but the reality is they're very different. So now these two children have to, while dealing with everything else, while listening to all the other family members and people that are involved in making arrangements, they have to decide, what does simple actually mean? And this goes back to what we were saying before about the will. Having your instructions as clear as possible so there's no misinterpretations that could possibly happen makes it much easier for your family when it comes time for them to make arrangements. So in this case, will they agree on what you want? If you put it in your file and you've said, this is what I'd like, now you've removed that need for them to agree because you've already made the decision. So that's really one of the huge benefits of planning ahead, because now not only will you take away that stress from them, but you also know that you're going to have the service that you would have wanted. Little note here, do you want to stay where you lay? I love this phrase. What that means is, a lot of times, especially when people are younger, so if I'm sitting with a younger family or younger person and making arrangements, they're thinking, okay, I'm in my 40s, life might change. If I move, if something happens, what happens to the money that I'm putting in on these pre-arrangements now? I don't want to put all this money into something and then just have it go into nothing later on in my life. It's a very important conversation to have. Please note that any arrangements, the funeral homes aren't used in Ontario. I'm in Ontario, Canada, so I can only speak to us based on our regulations. So in Ontario, any prearranged funds cannot be used by the funeral home. They're kept in a third party. So in that case, now you can have the freedom to know that your funds are safe, they're secure. You can travel, you can move, you can do whatever you like. And if you should pass in the future and you're living somewhere else, your funeral arrangements are paid out to wherever you are, right? So your funds are not lost when it comes to making pre-arrangements. And that's important to know as well. A final reminder, funerals are for the living. I know when we talk about our funeral, our cemetery, what we want, what we don't want, just put me in a garbage bag. It doesn't matter. Please remember that the reason we're doing this planning, the reason that we exist and we're talking is for the family who is left. And for them, the funeral is their opportunity to say goodbye, their opportunity to show how much they loved you, an opportunity to connect with others and hear stories that they've never heard. I love that part of funerals where everybody else comes. And I, as an example, I know my parents as parents. It's maybe a little bit beyond the parental role, maybe a little friendly, but I'm Caribbean, but now you're like a friend. So I don't really have that relationship with them. I know them this way. But at the service, that's a time where I'm going to meet their friends. I'm going to meet their coworkers. All these different people might come. And I'll hear stories about how they act and who they were and how they affected people in all these different facets of their life. And that is the most beautiful opportunity because very few other times in people's lives do you get to hear how they have affected others outside of our community, outside of our family space. Maybe at a wedding or at a retirement or a birthday party, we might have that opportunity. But at a funeral, it's as though it's our last opportunity to share, and people take advantage of those opportunities. And I think it's beautiful. So that's also why we have funerals, why we have these moments. It's for the community, it's for the connection, so we can support each other as we go through a very difficult time in life. Yes. Now, I did mention that I also studied to become a death doula. And I think I don't even know if I can say that it's still a new industry because it's been around for a while now. Um, One of the people I follow, I always forget her name. I'm so sorry. But her handle is Going with Grace. And I love a phrase she said. It actually affected me so much that it changes how I live day to day now. And she said, "You want to live a life worth dying from." Let's say it again. You want to live a life worth dying from, meaning that it's like that book. I think we talked about this before. I know, but the book, like Dying with Zero. And in that case, you're giving everything that you can in life and then dying empty. So when we talk about a good death, when I talk about learning to become an end of life doula, they really focus on that aspect of your life and living a full life and ensuring that we've planned and are holding space for the person who is passing. Now, many times we plan, think of a death doula, birth doula, use that as an example. So a birth doula is going to assist a mom or a person who's like a mom before she has her baby. They're going to help them kind of plan out the music they're going to listen to or whatever else. I don't know. Whatever else. What you kind of want for your birth plan. Do you want to be in water? Do you want to be on the bed? Do you want to be in a hospital? All of that. Now, the same thing will happen on my side. This is where I have more experience. In this case, we're going to plan out the same things. If I say this phrase, if you are so lucky to decide how you want your end to be, what would you want that to look like? Right? And a few things that I use, when we're thinking about end of life, what do you want to see? What do you want to feel? What do you want to smell, touch, and taste? I use the five senses because it gives us a base of kind of to think about this. I know it's a new concept for many people. So use this as a launching pad when it comes to what does that actually mean? So If I'm at home, or if I'm in a hospital, if I'm in hospice or anywhere, what do I want to see? Do I want to be watching a TV show? Do I want to be looking at nature? Do I want to see my family surrounding me? Who do I want to be there with me? I've heard stories of people who want their loved ones in the bed with them. They want to be holding, touching, and close, and others don't. Some people don't want to be touched. Maybe they're uncomfortable. They want to be free. Maybe I just want to have my toes in the grass. What is it that I want to feel? What is important to smell? I've talked about this before as well. I love my candles. So I will be smelling my Real Talk candles. My eucalyptus mint, please just have them in the room so that I can smell something that makes, if it's possible, right? If I can handle scents at the time, I would want to smell that and be in a space that makes me feel calm, makes me happy, right? Touch, we talked about a little bit before. What was the other one? Sound. Oh, I missed it. Sorry, I did touch for sound. Sound meaning, oh, do I want to hear jazz every day? Do I want to have somebody come and sing? Do I want to have white noise so that it just allows my mind to calm and I can focus on breathing or whatever else might be happening? That's the sound. And then taste. If possible, what do I want to taste? What do I want my meals to look like if I have that choice? And I use this example. Maybe someone can't take anything by mouth, but maybe I can put um, something on a moist cloth and just put it on their lips so they get the sense that they are having it. So there are options for people. And this is just a small aspect of what an end of life doula does. But I use this as an example. And this is just the mini talk, right? So I'll just wet the whistle of what it could be when it comes to holding space for someone who is passing and the family, because the person who is passing they should be the star. Like they should be the one that we are all focusing on, especially at that time. There's everything else kind of pales away at that point. And the family's going through something very strong, very different that they've most likely never gone through. Friends are going something they've never gone through as well. So holding space for them and how to support them in this time as well. Okay. Last one, your personal legacy. And I saved this for last because it makes me very happy to talk about. Everybody has a story. I love, if you know me, you know that I love talking to seniors. I love hearing the things that they think are small and don't matter, but what was life like? How did you grow up? What have you accomplished? What are some challenges you faced? What is most important to you? What are lessons you want to share? There's so many things. Look at me. I start getting excited. But there are so many things that are important and that we can share because we've lived our life experience. And taking opportunities to write these down or to share them with family or to create a journal is very important, because this individual life experience that I'm having can affect somebody else and can affect our futures. So I really encourage you to share your life story. I'll give you an example from me. So I sat down with my grandfather. Back in the day when we had beautiful blackberries, I brought out my blackberry and sat with him and just asked him questions. We just sat there and talked. We talked about his childhood. We talked about the greatest fear of his life. We talked about him falling in love. Um, we talked about my family, let's say it that way. It was just a beautiful conversation, a beautiful moment to sit and learn about who he was beyond the regular, because normally you go see somebody, hi, how's it going? We go to dinner, we eat, we'll do whatever and we move on. So this was a purpose time of understanding and learning about his history. I say that to say, at the time that he passed, the first thing I looked for was for that recording, right? Where is that recording? Where are these stories? It allows your family to feel as though you're still close, you're still with them, you're still not here, but your presence is still here. Your lessons are still here. Like years ago, before technology, there were stories of the parent who would write letters to their children so that on maybe special birthdays, at their wedding, they would receive a letter from their parent. Nowadays, we have technology that allows you to put everything up in the cloud. It can be stored there and delivered at whatever time you like, which is amazing, but fantastic. So we can take advantage of the tech. But the premise of the story and what they're doing and how we're sharing our lives is new and beautiful, because you're now able to still share your lessons and to share your experiences, because what we don't know will repeat. And life is moving so fast. If you hear the story of there's a nurse who did a study about the 5 greatest regrets of the dying. And a lot of their greatest regrets were working too much or not spending time with family. It's these simple things. But if you hear that same message from your loved one who has passed, if you hear a story from your loved one about a situation, and if you happen to be going through a similar situation, you can take the lessons from what they're saying and apply it to something happening in your life today, it carries more weight. And it really can affect us now and then the trajectory of our future. So please don't limit don't limit your legacy. Don't think that you don't have anything to share, or that it's not important, or that you'll have an opportunity to do it later. Make a recording, write it down, share it with your kids, share it with your friends, tell them that you love them. Use these opportunities, because whether we choose to or not, we are creating the way that our legacy will be. We're creating the way that our friends, that our families, that our coworkers, that they will remember us and how they will see us by just how we exist. So exist in a way that would leave a legacy that you'd want, if that can be my encouragement to you. All right. Okay, so that in essence is the little snippet of the talk that I give. If you're interested, if you wanted me to speak to any of your community groups or anybody really, please feel free to contact me. I'll give you my contact information in a little. This final note here says, ending well means you lived well. And that's the goal. So here we go. I'll invite you to join me here on Ending Well with Minnelle. This is a bi-weekly show at 7 o'clock. And you can find me on socials. The repeats or the recaps are also available on Instagram. And then here we are. So to book for a call or anything like that, or just for more information, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me here at Ending Well with Minnelle. And as you know, I am a funeral director. I am a licensed funeral director at the New Haven Funeral Center, which is in Ontario, Canada. So you can also find me there for any of your pre-arrangement needs or anything else in any other way that I can support you as well. Okay, here we go. Let me put this here. There's the information. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Take care. Have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.